Hello, Mind Mappers, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman, who's probably the godfather of the positive psychology movement. A lot of your favorite books, courses, and teachers have likely been inspired, as have I, by Martin and his teachings about positive psychology. Inside this book, Authentic Happiness, we're going to learn about signature strengths and how it's so important to know what yours are. We're going to learn about living the good life and finding your calling instead of staying at the job or career that you might currently have. First, we're going to talk about authentic happiness. And I pulled one quote from the book that I believe gives us a good overview of the entire concept we'll be learning here today. That quote is that happiness and well-being are the desired outcomes of positive psychology. So we got two desired outcomes that we're going over today, happiness and well-being. Martin Seligman was the former president of the American Psychological Foundation. He's also the founder of the positive psychology movement, as we've said before, which impacts many of the personal development books, lecturers, teachers that have been written about today. You see, before Martin wrote this book and actually founded the movement, most of psychology was focused on, of course, mental illness. That is, bringing people from a state of unwell to a state of being well. We didn't have much research behind what everyday people can do to make their lives better. And I hope that's what we're looking for here today in this book is how can we, me, an everyday person, make my life a little bit better using some of the principles inside this book. As Martin points out, happiness and well-being are our desired outcomes here today. We're going to focus on things like core virtues and how you can live up to them, finding your strengths and using them, how to move from job to calling. And before we get started, I recommend that you actually head over to Martin's website. Now, if you're a fan, you know that I almost never will tell you to go to a website in the beginning of the mind map, of course, because I want you to listen to the rest of the video. But I recommend that you go to AuthenticHappiness.org and take his strengths test. We're going to use it later, and I believe it's very, very impactful for the rest of your life. I recommend that you go and check that out right now, and after you're back, I'm going to tell you all about mind mapping. Okay, now that you're back, get the most out of these mind maps by following along. You can find the process of how I mind map plus 50 plus mind map templates, including this one, all at the link down below. Following along is going to help you learn more, remember better, and apply these books to your life. And with that, we'll move into our first teaching from the book, which is about virtues. The quote goes like this: "There's astonishing convergence across the millennia and across cultures about virtue and strength. Confucius, Aristotle, the Bushido samurai, the Bhagavad Gita, and many venerable traditions disagree on the details, but all of these codes include 6 core virtues: wisdom and knowledge, courage, love and humanity, justice, temperance, spirituality, and transcendence." Now, I've been doing a lot of reviews on Stoic texts recently, and you'll probably notice that, yes, Stoicism talks quite a lot about these different virtues. Convergence across thousands of years and among unrelated philosophical traditions is remarkable, and positive psychology takes this cross-cultural agreement as its guide. I think that's something very interesting that you don't see a whole lot. Some of these more academic types actually drawing from the ancient teachers, as I try to do on this YouTube channel. That's why I chose to go over this book. I think it's such an important thing to point out that positive psychology actually started with some of these ancient texts and ancient teachings. So what better place to start than with the wisdom of all of these ancient teachings? As again, some of you may know, I'm really fascinated with Stoicism. I don't think it's a coincidence here that Martin and the positive psychology movement have started with the 6 core virtues that are essentially mirrored in Stoicism. Many of these different ancient texts are very wise and deep, even before science came to the party. But starting from these 6 core virtues, Martin and team developed 24 different character strengths. These are what you're going to get if you take his online test, and what you should already have if you went and took the test already. The character strengths that we are the strongest in are revealed inside of that test. So the character strengths, not only are we going to see all 24 of them, but we're also going to see which ones we are the strongest in. Oftentimes, you'll be able to guess what your character strengths are, of course, but this test is a really good way to visualize what are my character strengths. And these strengths are extremely important because, as Martin says, using our strengths regularly in our everyday lives increases happiness and well-being. So you can think of all of these 24 different character strengths as relating back to one of these different kind of core virtues. So you might have more strength within wisdom or within courage or love and humanity. You want to know which kind of different pieces of your character are the strongest so that you can really double down on using those and not necessarily throw aside the ones that you're not living up to or the ones that you're not naturally gifted at, but at the very least double down on the ones that you are. So let me tell you a story about one of my coaching clients. He always struggled with sticking to the same thing or sticking to anything for a very long period of time. Maybe sticking to one thing just wasn't one of his character strengths. When I took him through this test, and what we found was he wasn't living in congruence with his strengths. Instead, he was trying to live up to the strengths that he thought the entrepreneur needed. And this is a little bit of a door opening for a lot of you. I want you to look at the character strengths that this test brought forward for you. And I want you to think in your own mind, how have I been living up to these strengths? Or how have I been trying to live up to the strengths that I believe that I need in order to play a particular role in my life? This is getting maybe a little bit deep for a simple book summary, but it's definitely something that we talk about on coaching calls. But business after business this coaching client started, he was successful, but then he often got bored, and those business ended up suffering, of course. So what does that tell us? Well, most likely he wasn't playing on his strengths. He didn't have a deep sense of who he was, what he was good at, and what he could contribute to the world. By getting a little bit of clarity on what he was able to transition some of the businesses that he was building, some of the skills that he got while building these businesses. And he learned to make it into a business where he was actually able to be creative and he was rewarded for it. Something very interesting that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize is how creative they really are. They're creating something from nothing, essentially for a career, for a vocation. And I think a lot of them, what we struggle with, and I'm definitely in this category, we end up struggling because there becomes a point where we don't get to be creative anymore. When we've built the system, when we've built the process, when we built the business, so to speak, and set up the system, that we run into a wall and have to kind of play the day-to-day role, and we're not very good at it because we're just so creative. Our strengths are much more creative. We are much more drawn to using our creativity than kind of being the type of person that plays the same role over and over again. And I'm not saying that playing the same role over and over again is the wrong thing to do. A lot of my coaching clients, that is what they're good at. And they need to spend more time doing that and less time trying to be the creative person coming up with new ideas. But what I am saying is you have to look at these strengths and ask yourself, am I trying to play a role that doesn't line up with these strengths? And could that be why I'm struggling in certain areas of my life? Something that I'm doing with all of my coaching clients right now. If you're interested in coaching at all, make sure you reach out via email. I'd be happy to connect with you and see if there's a way that we could come together on a coaching relationship. The next point we're going to talk about is these signature strengths. So I do not believe that you should devote overly much effort to correcting your weaknesses, is something that Martin says inside of the book. I tend to agree with him. Rather, I believe that the highest success in living and the deepest emotional satisfaction comes from building and using your signature strengths. Exactly what we talked about before. I want you to think about how much time are you spending trying to correct your weaknesses. For most of us, we know what we're bad at. I also think we don't choose to do things we're bad at on purpose necessarily. But quite often, we don't choose to not do things that we're bad at on purpose either. So we're kind of not choosing it either way. We're not necessarily even thinking about our strengths at all. Instead, we're thinking about the objective or the end goal that we want. So the real power here, I think, is knowing your strengths and choosing to use them to help you make decisions. So should you go for a particular business? Should you try for a particular job? Should you pick a particular hobby, whatever it might be. You need to take into account, almost use it as a filtering process. Will my signature strengths line up well with this particular position, job, career, business? If you do that, you are going to be much more educated on what you might actually like and what you might actually be good at, and that's going to help you be much, much more successful in my personal experience. But you might need a little bit more evidence. Research has shown that the more successful people are they're not the people with the highest IQs or GPAs. Rather, it's people who know who they are and what they are good at, and then they choose to do those things. And Martin shows this in the book. Spending just enough time to make sure their weaknesses don't eventually come back to bite them. And I think that's part of the process. You don't want to choose a career or a business that is going to force you into your weaknesses time after time. You want to make sure that either you can outsource your weaknesses or potentially pick a career that you don't need to use your weaknesses almost at all. So going forward, this mind map is going to focus on helping you get a clear view on what your strengths are and how you can use them in your life. So what are your 5 greatest strengths? Now's a good time to download the mind map, and you can follow along and put your 5 greatest strengths in the mind map right here. So your 5 greatest strengths from AuthenticHappiness.org are going to essentially be the top 5 strengths on the list. It's going to kind of go almost in chronological order. So you'll be able to see what your top 5 strengths are, and I'll share mine with you in the next point. Moving into that, we're going to talk about the good life. So what is the good life? Something that Martin says in the book. He offers up this question to us. He says, in my view, you can find it by following a startlingly simple path. The pleasant life might be had by drinking champagne and driving a Porsche, but not the good life. Rather, the good life is using your signature strengths every day to produce authentic happiness and abundant gratification. I'm going to say that again one more time for those in the back. The good life is using your signature strengths every day to produce authentic happiness and abundant gratification. Of course, this is another Stoic thought, as well as another ancient piece of wisdom. The good life isn't what's sold on TV commercials. It's not about what car you drive, the house you have, or the watch on your wrist. The good life isn't about anything external. It's about the development of self. So where does self-development actually start, you might be asking? Well, for me, it's kind of a 3-step process. Coming from Martin's book and coming from my own experience, I think step number 1 should be about finding your own signature strengths and really burning those into your mind. Don't let those go to the background. Double down on your strengths, as Martin has said before. Use those strengths every day. Whether you're a great writer, a good communicator, if you're someone that is very creative, or you're someone that is highly knowledgeable and logical, you need to use those strengths every single day. Kind of sharpen that stone, as of course Stephen Pressfield talks about. You want to use it every single day. Find ways that those strengths can help others. Now, this is another Stoic thought. Living the good life, living up to eudaimonia, is not necessarily how good can I get. It's how much good can I do for other people? How can my strengths, how can my virtues be shown in a way that's going to effectively help other people? I think that's so important. That's step number 3. So for those of you that want to know my strengths or might be interested in my strengths, here they are. I've got perspective and wisdom as my number 1 strength. And I think that's true. And I think that's why I chose to do this kind of distillation of wisdom for you guys here on this YouTube channel. Number 2, of course, as an entrepreneur, I'm creative, original, and I have a ton of ingenuity. I look for ways to solve problems. Open-mindedness, judgment, and critical thinking help me in my coaching career, as well as gratitude and leadership. Now, I have to tell you something. Number 4, gratitude. This is my most underserved strength. I feel so good when I thank people. I feel so good when I tell people they've done a great job. And I don't do it enough. So this is my resolution here to use my strength of gratitude more often with my coaching clients, with you guys that are helping me build this YouTube channel, and continuing on all the way through my life. I definitely transitioned this business to use all of these strengths for decades to come. I will be doubling down on these things. That's how important they are to me and how important I think they should be to you. Next, we'll come to our final point, which to me is one of the most important ones: finding your calling. If you can find a way to use your signature strengths at work often and also see your work as contributing to the greater good, then you have a calling. There's 3 kinds of work: a job, a career, and a calling. A job is something where you go to punch the clock for a paycheck, and we've all had those before. A career is enjoying the benefits of advancement while still punching the clock for that paycheck. Of course, we've all been there as well, most likely, or if you haven't, you probably will along your way. But number 3 is a calling, a passionate commitment to your work. Any job can be a calling, which is something that you might not be thinking. And any calling can become a job. A physician who views the work as a job and is simply interested in making a good income does not have a calling, while a garbage collector who sees the work as making the world cleaner, healthier, and a good place to live have a calling. So what I wanted to ask you here at the end of the mind map is, how do you view your work? For most of my coaching clients, this is a distinction between a job, a career, and a calling is really, really illuminating. Most of them have been frustrated by what they do for work for a very long time. A lot of them have tried opening businesses that haven't worked. A lot of them have worked jobs that they didn't like, and they think it was the job or the business. They think it was that fault. A lot of them see me as an entrepreneur and someone who can show them how to escape. But here's the secret. Most of them don't need to start a business. In fact, most of them just need a better understanding of their strengths. So the below exercise is a good way to go about identifying your strengths and turning that job into a calling. There's a quick note here. A lot of my clients, of course, they do start businesses when working with me. I think I just have this natural ability to see a business in anything that they might already be doing or inside of their own personal strengths. This isn't because business is what's going to make them happier or more fulfilled, though. I don't want you to think that. Some people will tell you that, some people will sell you that, but that's not the way it is. It's simply that sometimes creative people with certain strengths are well suited for business, and again, I have this really great ability for bringing that out in people. Business allows them to play to their strengths. I think that business is the most moldable career, it's the most moldable job that is the most able to be turned into a calling for a lot of people. With that out of the way, let's get into the exercise. Step number 1, we want to list all 5 of your strengths. So here's yours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you stop and write those down. You should have already done the test. If you haven't, I don't know why you're all the way at the end of the video. Here's mine again. Perspective and wisdom, creativity, open-mindedness, gratitude, and leadership. Identify how you would use them in everyday life. Of course, this is in an ideal world. There's yours, again, number 1 to 5, and here's what mine looks like, just to give you a little bit of context so you can write yours out as well. Every day, I read, create mind maps, and present so that I can share my perspective and wisdom with all of you. Perspective and wisdom, my first strength. Every day, I use my creativity, originality, and ingenuity in my business, creating new products and services and offering to help better service to my customers. Business is an ever-changing field, and every day I use my open-mindedness, judgment, and critical thinking to best determine the way forward from every possible angle. That's my open-mindedness, judgment, and critical thinking aspect. I've been wonderfully blessed to have an amazing mentor and friends and coaching clients. By showing them my gratitude, I play to my strengths and also grow my business through networking. Number 5 is leadership. And leadership is a skill that, of course, I use every day with coaching clients. Having the ability to lead without being attached to an outcome is the single most important skill for coaches, in my opinion. So again, I want you to stop this mind map. I want you to stop this video and fill out that mind map for yourself. Even if you can't think of 5 different ways that you can use those strengths, at least try and flex that creativity muscle a little bit so that you can get some perspective on how you might use your strengths in the future. So let's look at how you can get there. Can you find ways to use your strengths inside of your current job? Well, that's great. Do you maybe need to change careers or industries? Well, that's great too. Would starting a business be a good way to play to your strengths? That's great. See, as Martin says, a job, a career, a business, it really doesn't matter. Any business can be a job. Any job can be a calling. And what we're looking for is, how can I play to my strengths? How can I look at a way that I'm giving to the world and make it a calling? Thanks for being with me here today. I really appreciate you coming all the way to the end of the mind map. I'm using my gratitude strength a little bit here at the end. And I really hope to see you in the next one. This was Authentic Happiness by Martin Seligman.